kick up a chair and grab a slice of pizza because this theory hits the jackpot. Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory, a show I've shamelessly stolen from the devilishly handsome MatPat. But you know what I love more than MatPat? Devil May Cry. Sorry MatPat, but Dante. No, the other one. Well, he keeps his mouth shut at least, but no, the other one. That's not even the same series. There we go. This guy right here is like the coolest character ever. He's cocky, he's confident, but you can always tell he actually has the power to back it up, and in no way comes off as insecure and pathetic. But you know what else makes Dante so cool? Hideki Kamiya intentionally left much of the character's history a mystery to make him cooler. But you know one thing that to this day we still don't know about Dante? His age. Yeah, even today the series has never told us how old Dante is, or even what year the games take place in. But there are hints given in some of the games, developer interviews, and a couple of fan theories that will help us work out Dante's rough age in each installment. Sure, it may ruin some of the mystique of the character, but come on, this is the internet, and if the internet's good for one thing, it's ruining things. That sounded a lot better in my head. Moving on. But before we work out Dante's age, we need to establish the chronological timeline for the series. Yes, a game theory about working out a timeline. Never seen that before. The Devil May Cry series consists of 5 games, 3 novels, 2 comics, a manga, and an animated series. So we remove adaptations, the decanonized first novel, and anything relating to that god-awful reboot story, and then arrange those that remain into chronological order. We have the first game, the second game is a sequel, the second novel is a prequel to the second game, the third game is a prequel to the first game, the manga is a prequel to the third game, the fourth game falls between 1 and 2, and the anime is set between 1 and 4. And you thought Five Nights at Freddy's had a convoluted timeline. But much like the FNAF timeline, there is one other major event that occurs before any of the games that is key to working everything out. The death of Dante's mother when he was a child. Hey, you get out of here, reboot story, you're not part of this. Go on, shoo. Ugh, like staring into a backed up toilet indeed. And can I just ask, why was a reboot necessary? I mean, it's not like the series was doing poorly, or had been absent for 1,000 years like some other Capcom franchises I could mention but won't and will instead show you. I mean, did anyone really ask for this? Let's ask a random person on the street and get his take on the reboot.
I never asked for this.
And that, loyal theorist, is what we call a pointless tangent. Kinda describes the reboot as a whole, doesn't it? So anyway, with the chronological events mapped out, we're ready to start theorising. The first step is to gather any available information from the canonical stories themselves. So let's start with Devil May Cry 3, where Dante says,
"It's been nearly a year since we last met."
The meeting Dante refers to is actually depicted in the manga, placing Devil May Cry 3 1 year afterwards. Next, in the first game, Trish says,
"You're the man who lost a mother and a brother to evil 20 years ago."
Now Trish could very well be rounding up or down to 20 as a rough number, really placing it anywhere between 17 and 22. But since 20 is the number we're given, it really is just as likely to actually be 20 as any other number in that range, and around the 20th anniversary of his mother's death does seem like the perfect time to send a demon modelled after her to manipulate him. I'm inclined to believe Trish is being specific, and it really has been 20 years since Eva died. Virgil's opening cutscene in DMC4 Special Edition claims his visit to the town of Fortuna takes place a few decades before the main game. When exactly Virgil visited is unclear though, so we'll leave it aside for now. And finally, the novel's epilogue states that several months had passed since yada yada yada, before leading directly into the events of Devil May Cry 2. So the novel and the game take place several months apart, possibly within the same year. And that's actually it for explicit in-story sources. Well, there is one other, but, well, we'll get to that. For now though, let's look over one particular detail that is merely implied. See, in the manga, there is a scene in which Arkham tells Dante's twin brother Virgil about a woman who was murdered by demons on the outskirts of town 10 years prior. That seems like an oddly specific thing to include until you take a closer look at two other scenes. First is a flashback / hallucination Virgil has, which shows Virgil as a child, an oddly naked child, thank you Japan, being attacked by demons in a graveyard while a house burns in the distance. There's nothing else surrounding the house, but this graveyard must be close to some sort of settlement since it's not just for 1 or 2 people. It's almost as if this was on the outskirts of town? So we now have reason to believe that Arkham was talking about something from Virgil's past, but what about that other scene I mentioned? Well, earlier on in the manga, Dante has his own flashback, this one to the death of his mother. You want to know what's notable about this scene? Virgil isn't present, which seems to suggest that these two flashbacks are actually going back to the same point in time. Let's also keep in mind that the boy's father Sparta had recently passed away as well, so perhaps Virgil was visiting his father's grave alone one day, his brother and mother still at the house, when the demons attacked and Eva was killed. But that's just wait, no, this is a smaller theory as part of the larger main theory. Okay, I got it. So these 3 scenes suggest that Arkham is talking about Eva's death, which occurred 10 years before, making the events of DMC1 9 years after DMC3. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. There's also a notable piece from outside of the series itself. When asked on Twitter how old his Dante was, Hideki Kamiya, who only worked on the first game, responded with similar in age to Cobra. No, not that Cobra, this Cobra, star of the 1978 manga of the same name and one of the main inspirations for Dante's character. Early on in the series, Cobra visits his own grave, which marks him as 24 when he faked his death, which was 5 years before the series starts, making him 29. Now keep in mind that this is not exact. Kamiya specifically said similar in age, but it's pretty solid info nonetheless and will be helpful later on to verify our findings. So now we've managed to work out the amount of time between everything from the death of Dante's mother up to the events of the first game. But the next step is working out when DMC4 takes place, as the anime's placement is reliant on the 2 games it falls between. To work out the time frame of DMC4, we need to look at one of those non-canon sources, the DMC4 Novelization. See, a lot of planned story elements were cut from DMC4 during development, perhaps the most important of which was new protagonist Nero's mysterious link to Dante's bloodline. Well, the novel by the game's scenario writer after he left Capcom reveals that Nero is actually the son of Virgil. The canonicity of these details remains hotly debated amongst fans, but for the sake of this timeline, we need to assume that this particular detail is canon, as that was the time frame the developers had in mind when making the game. Okay? I don't want to see rage wars down in the comments over whether or not Virgil turning his blue orbs into red ones with a human makes sense with his character. It totally doesn't, by the way. So if Virgil is Nero's father, what does that mean for our timeline? Well, since Virgil is trapped in the demon world from the end of DMC3 up to the event of the first game where he dies, it's obvious that Nero would have been conceived prior to the 3rd game. Since Virgil would presumably spend more time with Arkham as their plan grew closer to fruition, my guess is that Virgil visited Fortuna shortly before or after first meeting Arkham in the manga. If Nero was conceived in that year, he would be born closer to DMC3 than the manga. It's also been stated that Nero in 4 is the same age Dante was in 3. If Nero is born around 3 and is DMC3 Dante's age during 4, then DMC4 Dante is double the age he was during 3. So what do we know about Dante's age in these 2 games? Producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi has gone on record as saying that Dante is in his teens during DMC3, and in his 30s and approaching 40 in DMC4. Approaching 40 suggests somewhere between 37 and 39. With that information, we now have 2 paths we can take to work out the 2 ages. First of all, the DMC4 novel suggests that Virgil's partner in his sexual escapades was a prostitute. Now I'm sure Capcom would want to avoid any unfortunate implications relating to underage sex. And with their proven desire to appeal to the American market, I think it's safe to assume they would have wanted to avoid a kerfuffle by not having Virgil be below the age of consent anywhere in the US. All US states set age of consent to between 16 and 18 years old. If he is 18, that allows Virgil to be of age all across the country, while still being a teen at age 19 during DMC3. The second method is to look over our range of DMC4 ages. Since no specific ages or years are ever given, I think we can assume that no character's ages would ever include a decimal point, instead always being a full number. Or put another way, no character would ever be considered 18 and a half, only 18 or 19. This means that Nero and DMC3 Dante's ages must be full numbers, doubling which always results in an even number, and the only even number within that age range is 38. Both of these methods find one unanimous conclusion: DMC3 Dante is 19 years old and DMC4 Dante is 38 years old. But MatPat, I pretend to hear you ask, what about the other piece of information from one of the official sources? First of all, well done for remembering that after all this time's passed since I mentioned it. And second, I think you have bigger problems than not knowing how old Dante is if you didn't notice that you just called me MatPat. But dear theorists, flattery will get you everywhere. Well, earlier I cited the Dmc4 Novelization as a source despite its dubious canonicity. But that novel also makes the claim that Virgil's visit to Fortuna was 16 to 17 years before DMC4. Now, while I accept the relationship between the two as being mostly canon, I don't accept this particular piece. If Virgil was there 16 to 17 years ago, then Nero was born almost a year later, making him 15 to 16, and I could maybe buy that he's supposed to be 16, but that would mean that 1. If DMC3 Virgil is Nero's age, then manga Virgil was a year younger than that for the conception, 14 to 15, and his partner is said to have been a prostitute. Remember those age of consent laws? And 2. Doubling that age would make DMC4 Dante 30 to 32. Now I can buy that Dante can survive being impaled through the chest in almost every game, but he does not look like he's in his early 30s in DMC4, so I'm inclined to disregard this one piece and move on. If we assume the much more reasonable ages I found, then Dante and Virgil are 19 during DMC3, minus 1 year to reach 18 for the manga, minus another 10 to get 8 when their mother died, plus 20 to get 28 during DMC1, and double 19 to reach 38 for DMC4. Looking at these numbers, they are consistent with what we have so far. 28 is about the same age as Cobra, who is 29, 19 is considered a teenager, which Dante is stated to be in DMC3, 38 falls right in the middle of our nearly 40 range from DMC4, and a few decades sounds adequate for 19 years. And now all of a sudden we're almost done. Now that we know Dante's age during DMC1 and DMC4, we also know that there is a 10-year gap between the two, which allows us to try and place the anime into our timeline. For this, I have gathered 3 clues to help us place the anime. First of all, Dante is wearing his DMC1 attire instead of his DMC4 outfit, suggesting the anime occurs closer to 1 than 4, so somewhere within the first 5 years. Second, after joining Dante at his shop at the end of DMC1, Trish has gotten fed up with Dante's attitude and gone solo. This kind of relationship breakdown most likely took a while to occur, so I would guess at least a year has passed since Trish joined Dante. And finally, Lady in the series resembles her DMC3 form. By the time of DMC4, Lady has... well, let's just say Kalina Ann isn't the only ballistic weapon she's packing, if you know what I'm saying. Or in more professional terms, her breasts and buttocks are filled out quite noticeably compared to her original design. Since her anime self resembles her DMC3 teen self, and yes, she is a teen, her outfit in the manga is clearly a school uniform, she isn't likely to balloon up like this in just a few short years. As such, I would give her as many years as possible to reach that level, and since at least a year has passed since DMC1, I would give her the full 9 years to grow, making Dante 29 during the anime. Haha! You won't find that level of deductional skill on Death Note. Is that still a thing people talk about? Death Note? Or is Grandpa Snake just too old and out of touch with the kids these days? So what's left in our timeline? Just DMC2 in the second novel, but there's really nothing about its place aside from its position and Kobayashi claiming DMC2 is far after DMC4. You see, Virgil and Eva were the key so far, but DMC2 mostly forgets about them, as well as good game design. But I have managed to find something that will put the final 2 pieces into place in our timeline puzzle. Take a quick look back at Dante's ages throughout the series. 8, 18, 19, 28, 29, 38. Notice anything? Every time the last digit of Dante's age is an 8, something of note occurs in his life. If this pattern holds, then we can safely assume that DMC2 takes place when Dante is 48 years old. Or does it? That was my original conclusion back in June when I fully compiled my findings, but then I decided to try and finalise the anime's place in the timeline, which left me with 2 ages where 9 is the final digit. So what if Dante is actually 48 during the novel, he has an unmentioned birthday before the epilogue, and is 49 during it and DMC2? So with that, my final timeline goes a little something like this. 2000 BD. A demon named Sparda betrays his own kind to protect humanity. He defeats the Demon King Mundus in battle and spends the next 2 millennia protecting humanity before settling down with a woman named Eva. 0 AD. Eva gives birth to Sparda's twin sons, Virgil and Dante. 8 AD. Sparda dies and the family is attacked by demons. Eva is killed and the brothers are separated. 18 AD. Virgil meets Arkham and the two begin work on a plan to obtain power. While out on a job, Dante learns that Virgil is still alive. Virgil visits the city of Fortuna to investigate the Order of the Sword. Arkham sacrifices his wife, prompting their daughter Mary to become a demon hunter and seek revenge. 19 AD. Nero is born in Fortuna. Dante decides to open a demon hunting business before Virgil and Arkham's plans go into motion. With help from Mary, Arkham and Virgil are defeated, Dante obtains his father's sword, and Virgil remains in the demon world, where he challenges and is defeated by the Demon King. Dante opens his shop under the name Devil May Cry. 28 AD. Dante is visited by a demon named Trish, who resembles his mother. She informs him that Mundus is attempting to return. Dante defeats his corrupted brother, and then the Demon King himself. Trish joins Dante as his partner. 29 AD. Trish briefly leaves Devil May Cry to become a solo demon hunter. Dante is hired to protect a young girl named Patty until the demons hounding her are killed. 38 AD. Dante travels to Fortuna to investigate the Order of the Sword. He fights against and alongside Nero and defeats the Order, leaving Virgil's sword in Nero's possession for safekeeping. 48 AD. Dante works with a woman named Beryl to stop a plot involving an artifact known as the Beast Heads. 49 AD. Dante is hired by a huntress named Lucia to help stop the resurrection of the demon Argosax by the business mogul Arius. Arius and Argosax are both killed, and Dante is last seen travelling deeper into the demon world to possibly never return. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to the Super Amazing Endcard Tournament, where we're looking at the devilishly beautiful babes of Devil May Cry. Which one is your favourite? Do you prefer the OG DMC gal, the leggy beauty Trish? Are you maybe looking for an exotic dark-skinned European girl? Click here to vote for Lucia. Do you have a thing for kick-ass girls in school uniforms? Then you'll want to vote for Lady. Or do you have a preference for a more wholesome every girl like Kyrie? Or for some added variety, maybe you prefer a girl with psychological issues like the reboot's Cat. Click here to cast your vote, and be sure to tell us why they're the best down in the comments. Just don't expect to get the results anytime soon. This video was a nightmare to edit, and I have newfound respect for Ronnie for making this look so easy. Granted, I was probably doing every single thing wrong, so there's that to consider. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for sitting through it despite my awful delivery. Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe you'll want to clean your palate after this, so why not check out some real game theory episodes like this one on the Mario timeline, or the first theory on Five Nights at Freddy's. The next FNAF theory is just around the corner, so now's the perfect time for a refresher. I have nothing else to say, so I'll just stop now.